Okay, hi, my name is Gregg and I am a co-owner of Urban Pump Personal Training Studios with my wife Sharon Hoffman. I'm going to do a lecture today on abs. Everybody likes shredded abs, everybody wants to get abs, but there's a lot of myths and there are a lot of realities in relation to getting shredded abs, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to start with discussing some of the myths and some of the half-truths that are out there, and then comparing and contrasting it with what really works and what I've learned over the years to make, well, get the shredded abs that we're talking about. So, let's start it off. Abs, shredded. We're going to start with myths. The first one being is that people think they need to do 300, 400, 500 crunches a day, or a lot of sit-ups, or just a high volume of core work to be able to see the shredded abs. I'll call that the volume approach. Tons of crunches. Here's an example. You'll see people talking about doing 300 to 400 crunches a day. Thinking that that's what they need to do to get shredded abs. Celebrities oftentimes say they do that, and so it's a very common conception. Well, the truth be told, that if you're doing a lot of repetitions, then you're working the slow twitch fibers. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later on, the slow twitch and the fast twitch fibers. But here I want to point out that if you do a lot of slow twitch fiber work, which endurance work is, in this case doing 300 or 400 crunches, then you're working only the slow twitch fibers. You're not working the fast twitch fibers, and it's the fast twitch fibers that bring about tone and definition. That's for all the muscles throughout the body. That also includes the abs. So just understanding that concept alone means that if you're doing 300 or 400 or 500 crunches, then the intensity of the exercise you're doing is too low to work the fast twitch fibers. It is much better to do shorter or a lower volume of ab work than it is to do a higher volume of ab work, but to make those repetitions count. In other words, you may want to add some weight or some resistance to those crunches, slow them down a little bit more, and make the ab muscles work a lot harder to produce the desired result. In other words, shorten the time down. So that's one. Okay, another one that I hear a lot is that I must starve myself to see abs. That's a half-truth. You really do need to watch your diet. You need to have your calories under control to get there. The main point I want to make is that if you really focus on starving yourself, and let's say you want to cut down to 500 calories a day to really see the abs show, that's difficult to maintain. It's difficult to do. And more often than not, you're not going to see the results that you want because you still have to work the muscles hard. You still have to work the ab muscles hard. And if you're down to 500 calories a day, you're not going to have the energy to be able to do that. So yes, you do need to keep an eye on your calories. You want to keep them under control, but you don't want to be draconian with your caloric intake. Doing that skews the results. You probably will quit before you see the results, and you're just going to feel miserable. You don't need to go to that degree. Now here's another one that's real common. This one is where people think that they have to do a lot of aerobic training. To see shredded abs. Once again, that's a half-truth. If you do aerobic training, you do burn more calories, which is good, and you do burn your calories from the fat stores, which is good. The problem is that the body really doesn't respond all that well if you do a lot of aerobic training. As a matter of fact, after a while, the body kind of attenuates to it, and it gets used to it. Let me use an example. Let's say that if you hop on a bike, when you first start an exercise program, you spend about a half an hour on that bike and you do it at a moderate intensity and you burn about 300 calories on that activity. That's fine and dandy. You do that again the next day and you do it again the next day. Well, if you keep doing that over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, the body actually gets used to that activity, it gets used to that exercise, and it gets more efficient at that exercise. So instead of taking 300 calories to do the same amount of work, it only takes 200 calories. In other words, the body gets more efficient and it gets more difficult to see continued weight loss, continued fat loss. That's one of the problems I have with aerobic training. The second thing is that if you do a lot of aerobic training, you can actually tear the body down. You lose muscle mass instead of gain muscle mass, and muscle is what increases your basal metabolic rate. You tend to burn more calories if you have a higher metabolic rate and if you have more muscle. Too much aerobic training goes the opposite direction. So the main point I want to make on that is if you want to see shredded abs, doing a lot of cardio training is not the way to go. You want to temper that with strength training and some rest and recuperation between your workouts. Okay. Number 4 is fad diets in and of themselves. There's some talk about a high protein diet versus a high carbohydrate diet, and that high protein that high carbohydrates tend to store more fat than a high protein diet. I'm finding more research on it pointing to some truth to that. You do want to have a higher protein diet, a higher fat diet, and a lower carbohydrate diet. As a matter of fact, the body can store only so many amount of carbohydrates, so many grams of carbohydrates, period, and that if you take in more carbohydrates than that, it would be stored as fat. But still, the main factor to keep in mind is that it's still a calorie in, calorie out situation. Let's say, for example, you do a high protein and a high fat diet, you'd take in 3,000 calories on a daily basis, but your body only burns 2,000 calories a day. You're still going to be putting on fat. So you still got to keep a closer eye on the calories than you do so much the exact protein and carbohydrate ratios. So, is there truth to fad diets and having a high protein diet? Yes, there's some truth to it, some kernels of truth to it. You do want to lean more towards a higher protein and a higher fat diet, but in general you still want to have less calories coming in than going out if you want to see fat loss over the course of time. Number 5, what about tummy tucks? How well do they work? That's a good one. Tummy tucks do work. You're going to see fat loss. Obviously, they're taking fat out of the midsection. But there's a couple of problems with it. The first one being is that when you take the fat out of that area, it doesn't mean that you're taking the fat out of your whole body, and you're still going to see it. As a matter of fact, it's going to come back funny if you don't change your diet and nutritional habits. I've seen this. I've had some clients that had a tummy tuck, and they were leaner for a while, but they haven't changed their eating patterns. And so when they gained the fat back, it came out in different areas. It was more around the hips, just below the stomach area, for example. It was stored more in the upper back. It was stored in other areas of the body, so it came back and it looked kind of funny. I certainly wouldn't want to recommend doing tummy tucks. As a matter of fact, if you were to do a tummy tuck, what I would recommend is that you do a diet and exercise program, you get in shape, you lose the body fat that you're going to lose, and then if there's that last little bit that you can't seem to get rid of, then you may want to consider a tummy tuck. Maybe. But I really don't even think you need that. I think it is much better to do a diet and exercise program. Stay away from the tummy tucks. It costs a lot of money, has a lot of problems, and one of them is that when the fat comes back funny. You really don't want that. Okay, number 6, diet pills. Do they work? How do they work? Well, once again, just like everything else, there's a half-truth to this. It does work, it works a little bit, but it's certainly not something I would recommend, certainly not over a long period of time. And here's why. Diet pills are mainly a stimulant, usually caffeine. It has white willow bark maybe, or guarana. Any one of those are a stimulant to the body, and the body reacts as such. And there's a couple of things that it does. First of all, when you start taking those kind of supplements, You tend to burn more energy because you're wired. So you're going to be a bit more active, you're going to be a little bit more jittery maybe, or you're going to train harder when you do your workouts, which is good. And then the other thing that they do is they tend to suppress the appetite a little bit. So when you combine both of those, you're going to see an effect. You're probably going to lose a little bit of weight when you first start taking them. However, there are a couple of problems with that. And the main one is, just like with aerobic activity or exercise, the body will tend to attenuate to it. It gets used to it. So for you to see that same kind of kick, over time, you're going to have to take larger and larger doses. And over time, once again, just like you do with a lot of aerobic training, the body's just not going to respond very well to it at all. And you'll be wired all the time. It's just not a good way to go. So my recommendations, if somebody wanted to use these supplements, I would recommend that they don't use them for a long time, that they focus on their diet and their exercise program, and they get down to where they're pretty lean. But if they want to get ready for a vacation or something, they're 2 weeks out and they want to get just that last little bit of body fat off, then, you know, maybe that last week you might want to take a diet pill or up your coffee intake from 1 cup a day to 2 cups a day for a while and get a little bit of that stimulus effect, and to suppress the appetite a little bit just to kind of help you over the edge. But once you do that for a week or so, just stop and get back to your normal way of being, and you should be okay. Once again, personally I don't do them, I don't recommend them, but if you were to use them, that would be the best way to go about it. All right, here's another one, spot reduction. After all these years, you'd think people would know better about spot reduction and how it works, but I still get this question. If I do a lot of torso twists, for example, am I going to see more fat loss around the love handles? If I do more crunches, am I going to see more fat loss around the abs? Truth is, no, you won't. It doesn't speed up fat reduction in those certain areas. The body has a certain way it comes on, and it has a certain way it comes off. And here's how it breaks down in general. For men, when they first start putting on fat, they put on more around the midsection. So they eat more calories than they're burning off. That's where it comes in. They start seeing a bit of a gut. For women, the first place is around the hips and thighs. Now for both men and women, once they get that first area of fat starting to accumulate a little bit, and they start putting on even more fat, then the body starts putting on it in the outer extremities. So from there it'll go to the legs, to the chest, to the upper back, to the arms, to the feet, to the hands. Now, here's the crazy thing about it, is that when somebody starts focusing on fat loss, it comes off the opposite direction. The first place you're going to see it would be in the hands and the face and the feet, and then as somebody loses more body fat as they go along, it starts going more to the midsection. So, another way of saying this is that, well, let me put it this way. When people have ripped abs, the reason why they're so coveted by everybody is because to get to that point, it means that that person has dedicated themselves to exercise and diet for a long, long time. Because for them to have ripped abs, that means they had to lose the fat throughout the whole body first, and it takes time to do so. I think it's one of the biggest frustrations my clients have is when they ask me, well, can I see ripped abs? Can I see it in a few months? No. It's going to take a couple of years, and you have to work hard at it, and you have to be consistent with it. But you do it, you will get the ripped abs, and you can keep them. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen through spot reduction. So understand this, when you start your exercise program, and if you want to see the body fat loss, and you want to see the abs, you're embarking on a journey. It will take time. The efforts are worth it, but it will take time. There is no such thing as spot reduction. Here's another one, cleanses. Very popular. I know people that like to do cleanses, and when they do, they lose 10 pounds in a week or whatever the case may be. I even know of an ex-personal trainer who does that, and she knows better, but she still does it. I don't know why she does that. But cleanses really don't work. You're not going to see body fat loss doing cleanses because, first of all, by getting rid of the toxins out of the body, really, I don't know if it does that or not. I really don't know. I don't think you have to do a cleanse to get the toxins out of the body. I think you just need to eat better, and the body will take care of itself, first of all. But generally when a person does cleanses, what they're really doing for the course of a week or 2 weeks is that they're dramatically reducing the amount of calories they're taking in. Oftentimes they get down around 400 or 500 calories a day. So it is a calorie restriction diet in one form or another. Yes, you're going to lose fat. Yes, you're going to lose weight. But more often than not, you're going to lose water weight and you're going to lose some muscle mass when you do that. Once again, I don't recommend that because it's certainly not a healthy way to go. If you lose any muscle and if you lose any water weight, those are things that you need for good health. You start losing that, it's not a good thing. So I wouldn't recommend cleanses. They're a short-term fix, if they're even a fix at all. And this, I guarantee, is that if you keep doing cleanses over time, you're going to find that every time you do a cleanse, it's going to be harder and harder to lose the weight. And that's because the body adjusted to that too. So, in summation, cleanses, stay away from them. Once again, make a long-term commitment. You'll be much better off. I think under the subheading of that, I want to talk a little bit about what's known as HCG. That's become in vogue lately. And as near as I'm able to understand about that, it is a hormone that women take to put a couple of drops of it under their tongue. And it's supposed to help them with fat loss. But along with that, these people are supposed to really restrict their diet to 500 calories a day. And it's purported to be miraculous that people will lose a lot of weight in a short amount of time. And they're claiming it's because of the HCG. Well, truth be told, you're going to see fat loss or weight loss, more specifically weight loss on 500 calories a day, whether you take the HCG or not, because it's a calorie reduction diet. I'm willing to bet, and I would love to see somebody take me up on this, is to do a 2-week HCG diet without taking the HCG, and then another person at the same time doing the same 2-week diet, taking the HCG, and let's see if there's any difference between the outcomes. I'm willing to bet it's going to be about the same. There's really nothing magical that I can see from doing HCG as far as losing body fat or body weight. It's really a low-calorie diet in disguise. So, I don't recommend that one either. Number 9, yoga. Helps get ripped abs. And I'll just spend a little time on that. In and of itself, yoga does not do that. Yoga cannot do that because yoga works more the slow twitch fibers than it does the fast twitch fibers. However, there are some forms of yoga out there that include some core conditioning with them, and yeah, that would help. But really, if you want to see more ripped abs, if you want to see more tone and definition throughout the body, you do need to work the fast twitch fibers somehow. Not the slow twitch, but the fast twitch. And yoga tends not to work the fast twitch fibers too much, so you may see some, but I think in general, if you're going to use a yoga program in and of itself for body fat loss and see shredded abs, you'll be left a little bit disappointed. Now, don't get me wrong about yoga. I think yoga does have many good qualities. The fact that it puts a lot of focus on the mind-body connection, on the spiritual connection, and helping people learn to be present, I think that's fantastic. And I think that was the general recommendation, or the reason why yoga came into being in the first place, was more for the mind over matter and getting present and getting into the body kind of thing. It's good for that. It is certainly good for that. But as it being an all-be-all, end-all form of exercise, particularly to see body fat loss and see ripped abs, it's not one of the better forms out there for that. So those are some of the myths, some of the very popular myths, some of the myths that just don't seem to go away. Now, let's talk about what does work. Truths. First of all, I think it's important when you embark on any exercise program is to be realistic. Please be realistic. If it took somebody 5 or 10 years to gain 50 pounds of fat, they're not going to lose it in 5 to 8 months. They're just not. It's going to take longer. It took a long time to put it on. It's going to take a long time to take it off. You really need to commit to a lifestyle change. You have to do that, first of all. So that's the main point I want to make before you embark on any exercise program. Be realistic. Make it a long-term goal. Stick to that plan. The second thing is to strength training. GTH training. I think more and more you're going to find trainers recommending strength training over aerobic training. I've been saying it for years, and it just makes a lot of sense. And here's the reason why. First of all, when you do strength training, you're going to get the proper hormonal response. You're going to produce more of the human growth hormone. You're going to produce a little bit more testosterone with that than you will with aerobic training. With aerobic training, you're going to see more cortisol, some of the more catabolic hormones that actually tear down muscle. You're going to encourage that system a bit more than you're going to encourage a system that builds up the muscle. One of the main things, or one of the great things I think about strength training as far as weight loss or body fat loss is concerned is that it really does a great job of raising your basal metabolic rate. There's been some research, for example, that shows, actually there's been a lot of research, some of them showing that for every pound of muscle you have, you burn anywhere from 10 calories a day up to 40 or 50 calories a day just for that pound of muscle. Whether you are active or not, you burn that many calories. That's a big improvement. That's a big difference. Now, the average person will lose about a half a pound of muscle a year from age 17 and 18 on up through the rest of their lives, too. So that makes it especially difficult. And let's just throw out some general numbers to get an idea of how it works. Let's say after 10 years, by the time somebody gets to be 30 years old, and this is common if they don't do a strength training program, you can do aerobic training, and you're still going to see this. You're going to lose about 5 pounds of muscle. It's gone, which means your basal metabolic rate lowered. And it could be anywhere from 200 to 400 calories on a daily basis that your basal metabolic rate lowered, which may not seem like a lot on that daily basis, but when you add it up over the course of a week, it makes a big difference. So, if it's at, let's take it's 200 calories a day that you burn, just 200 calories a day. Over the course of 7 days, now you're looking at 1,400 calories. That's a calorie, by the way. 1,400 calories in that 1 week span that your body now has to deal with that it didn't have to when you were younger, when you were 17, 18, 19, when you were active, when you had some muscle and you were moving a lot and your body was going through its growth phase. That's 1,400 calories a week your body now has to deal with. That's about a half a pound of fat. It's going to be stored as fat. It's not going to go anywhere else. It's going to go into the fat cells. Over the course of a month time, that's a pound. Over the course of a year, that's 12 pounds. Over the course of 2 years, that's 24 pounds. Over the course of 3 years, now you're looking at 36 pounds of fat that the body now has to deal with that it didn't have to before, simply because you've lost the muscle mass. So the only way that you can make up for that, if you don't do anything to improve your muscle mass, is cut your calories down and or increase your activity. And that gets difficult to do. For example, exercise physiologists oftentimes recommend when you start hitting your plateaus on aerobic training, and they'll always say you got to increase either duration or frequency. So if you start out 3 times a week, half an hour, now they're going to recommend 3 times a week for a full hour, and then 4 times a week, and then 5 times a week, and then 6 times a week. Next thing you know, you're out there exercising all the time. And you're seeing diminishing returns on your investment in that sense. It's the same thing here. It's the same thing with cutting the calories down too. There's only so low you can go before you start feeling tired all the time and when you're hungry all the time. How are you going to be able to stick to that? If you keep your muscle mass, that's a whole different story. You can eat for more calories and you're going to burn the calories off more easily. Strength training in and of itself, really in my opinion, is the key. You've got to embark on a strength training program. All right, number 3, I'm going to expand on that a little bit. You need to use more intensity in your exercise program in general. Oftentimes when people do a strength training program, a resistance training program, or just about any kind of exercise program that they do, they don't train hard enough. I'm going to explain a little bit about fast twitch, slow twitch fibers now. Slow twitch fibers produce low levels of force. They do for great lengths of time. They're the endurance fibers. The fast twitch fibers produce high levels of force, and in a short amount of time they just kind of burn out. But they're the ones that get stronger. They're the ones that change shape. They're the ones that bring about more tone, more definition, more shape in the body. They're also the ones that give you more structural support. Now this lecture isn't so much talking about that, so I'm not going to spend much time there. But the other main point about it is that the fast twitch fibers are also the ones that increase your basal metabolic rate. All those things happen with the fast twitch fibers. If you do a lot of endurance activity, you work the slow twitch fibers, and they don't burn very many calories. You do intense activities where you have to use the fast twitch fibers, then you're getting them stronger, you're increasing your basal metabolic rate. So you really need to add intensity in your training programs. So as a general recommendation, for example, instead of doing 20 repetitions per set, and instead of doing 5, 6, or 7 sets per body part, my recommendation would be to cut the volume down rather dramatically and cut the reps down dramatically and increase the intensity, increase the weight. So let's say, for example, if you do 5 sets of 20 repetitions, or let's make it more reasonable. I think most people do 15 to 20 reps for 3 sets whenever they do something. So let's say that you're doing a bench press with 80 pounds and you're doing 20 repetitions 3 times, 3 sets. It would be much better if you add, let's say, 25 pounds to it and you're doing 100 or 110 pound bench press, where you're doing 1 set and you hit momentary muscular failure, or you get a deep level of fatigue in your muscle within 8 to 10 repetitions. You're going to have far better results from that than you will keeping the repetition range higher and doing more volume. Because when you do that, then you're calling into play the fast twitch fibers. You have to produce more force to lift and lower that weight because it's heavier, and so you're going to get the deeper fibers involved. Put intensity in your program if you really want to see the changes take place. And that does include getting ripped abs. Now, as I've been saying, I'm not a big fan of aerobic training. Does that mean you should not do it? It depends. Let me clear some caveats first. I'm not a big fan of aerobic training. You do not need to do aerobic training if you want to see ripped abs. I'm telling you, you do not need to do that. I haven't done an aerobic training program. Well, I did it last year for about a month or 2, but that's the first time I've done a consistent aerobic program for, 10 years. And I've always been able to keep lean, and if I wanted to get a little leaner, all I had to do was cut my calories back and train a little bit harder, and my abs would pop right out. I've been very consistent with that. My wife is the same thing. She used to do a lot of aerobic training back when I first met her. I told her to stop all of that and focus more on strength training and watching her nutrition a little bit better. She got ripped abs. So my main point to that is that you do not need to do aerobic training if you want to see ripped abs. Now I know there are a lot of people out there that enjoy their aerobic training. And if you do, I would not recommend to stop doing it, but I would recommend that you change your focus a little bit. The way I see it is that first and foremost, when you do an exercise program, you have to do strength training. I think we all need it. If you want to have the fountain of youth, if you want to see the ripped abs, do the strength training. But then you can do some cardio on the off days, and you can temper the two. For example, if you like doing cardio training, you may want to do 2 days of strength training and then maybe 2 days of cardio work. Or if you want to focus more on strength training, you do 3 days of strength training and maybe 1 day of cardio work. Or if you're like me, you can do the 3 days of strength training and no cardio work. But the main point is that you make the strength training primary, and you can use aerobic training to help you burn some more calories if you want to, but just don't go crazy with it. And the reason why I say you really need to balance that is because if you do too much cardio work and if you do too much strength training, the body does shut down. You get into an overtrained state and it just stops responding. And if you do that for a long period of time, and I'm talking several years, and you're going to start seeing the body wear down. You're going to start seeing problems with arthritis, osteoarthritis. I've seen situations where people started getting chronic fatigue. fibromyalgia. I think all of those are symptoms of overtraining and tearing the body down over the course of time. So you really want to temper your exercise program to make sure you rest and recover very well between the bouts that you do. Okay, point number 5. Eat a healthy diet. This one seems obvious, and it is. But it is confusing as to what people consider a healthy diet. I'll explain on it just a little bit. It's really not that hard. First of all, eat whole foods. Eat whole grains, eat lean meats, eat chicken, eat fish, eat fruits, eat vegetables, cook at home, use very little oil, use very little sauces. That's it. I mean, you can't get any simpler than that. You really, that's it. If you like to eat out a lot, then you're going to start having problems. Now, I don't care how well you are with watching your menu when you go out and eat. There's always hidden fats, there's always hidden calories, there's always something that it makes it very difficult for you to be able to stay on a lean diet. It is much better to eat at home and to eat whole foods. And having said that, it's better to stay away from simple sugars like sodas, cake, brownies, candy, things along those lines. It's pretty common sense stuff. We all know that. So really just do it. And I think under the subheading of that, actually is the next point in and of itself. Point number 6 is calories do count. They count. Very much. As a rule of thumb, here's what I found that works well for most people. Men, if they want to see body fat loss, do a strength training program 3 times a week like I'd recommend, but keep the calories between 1,800 to 2,200 calories a day. Stay away from the alcohol, stay away from the sweets, eat the whole foods that I just mentioned earlier. You're going to see body fat loss. I guarantee you, you're going to see steady, consistent body fat loss over time. For women, it's anywhere from 1,300 to 1,600 calories a day. Same thing. Eat whole foods, cook at home, stay away from the simple sugars, stay away from the alcohol, stay away from all the stuff that just adds a lot of calories but doesn't give you very much nutritional power, and eat clean. 1,300 to 1,600 calories a day. And if you stick with that with the strength training program 3 times a week, once again, I guarantee you, you're going to see body fat loss. And if you stick with it over a course of time, you will see the ripped abs. It will happen. And that leads to the final point. You've got to give yourself some time. We all know Rome wasn't built in a day. It certainly didn't get burned in a day, but it took time. It's the same thing with your body. You're not going to see ripped abs, and I know I'm harping on this, but I have to because people are real stubborn about it, but you have to give yourself some time. As a rule of thumb, I would recommend when you embark on your exercise program, and if you're consistent with it, expect to take about 2 to 3 years for you to really see the abs that you want to see. You're not going to see it in 4 to 6 months, unless you're lean to begin with. But most people aren't. Most people that we find are usually around 25 to 30% body fat. If you're around there, just dig in. Give yourself time. And if you hit a little bit of a, if you slide back, for example, where one day you eat really bad or you get off your diet or an exercise program for a week, don't beat yourself up. Just pick yourself up, get back on the bandwagon, and start again. There's nothing wrong with having binges from time to time if you don't let it overwhelm you, if you don't start feeling negative about it, and if you don't get off your plan. Just get right back on it and keep moving forward. That's it. That's how you get ripped abs.